And joining us from Capitol Hill, Republican Congressman from California and Chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, Representative Darrell. Also here on set, Chairman of Deutsch Incorporated, Donnie Deutsch.
Oh, come on, that doesn't. Come on, he's a love doctor now, okay? Can we?
Why don't we tell everyone about Monday night
anymore? Okay. I'm on TV now. You're the love doctor.
Yes, I am.
How's that working out?
Do you want me to call you that from now on, Donnie?
They call him Dr. Love, okay? You do it as well.
Love calling, and as I said, Monday night, a full hour on Piers Morgan with myself for Valentine's Day, dispensing love advice. I kid you not. That's this juggernaut. That is what has happened.
I think he just promoted himself on another network,
yes,
but I will say I was trying to figure out what to do with my wife on Valentine's night. Now Susan and I know we're going to be watching Piers Morgan and Donnie Deutsch.
Sometimes you just have to let art happen.
Sometimes
that's what happens.
You're going to help me through the night.
Be taking calls from women, though.
That is exciting. All right, so let's go to some news here. Can we go to the chairman? Okay, he is a chairman now.
Yes, he is.
Chairman Issa, thank you so much for being with us. We want to talk about what you're doing, but first let's talk about the stories, of course, in the media. There is a back and forth. I think it's very healthy between the Republican chairman and the Republican freshman on the size of cuts. Republicans are up to $40 billion in the House. The freshmen and other conservatives wanted to go higher. What's going on, and where do you think this is going to end up?
Well, Joe, I'm sure that we're going to end up at a run rate of greater than $100 billion on an annualized basis. But of course, being part of the way through the year, there's a typical scoring problem of people want to score the rest of the year rather than what your run rate is for the whole year. But I'm confident that we'll get over $100 billion in real cuts at an annualized basis, and then continue accelerating. Remember, this is the first cut. Then we come back to deal with entitlements, which is a large pot of money, hard to deal with, but we intend to make real reform.
That is great news. Mr. Chairman, we've been asking this question around the table, whether these freshmen who are coming in talking about touching 12% of the budget, which is the discretionary non-defense spending, are going to go after the other 88%. From what you're saying, it sounds like the Republicans are. So you guys are planning to go after Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and Pentagon spending in a way that gets us out of our debt crisis in the long run?
We are, and in fact, President Obama with Secretary Gates began the process. There have been some real cuts in defense spending. Additionally, we've found, and it'll come out this week from appropriations, some additional security cuts that can be made without reducing our troops in the field's real effectiveness.
You know, obviously there was the lunch yesterday with Republican leaders, and it was John Boehner, Eric Cantor, and Kevin McCarthy among those that went to lunch with the president. And
they are absolutely neatest eaters, so we sent them.
Were they good? I hope they represented well. After that, they struck a cooperative tone. Take a listen.
I thought it was pretty clear today that the president wants to try to find some common ground with us. There are areas that we are going to disagree about. But I think all of us know that there are some issues that we can work on together. And whether it's education, whether it's tax policy, whether it's trade, or even cutting spending, I think we can find common ground and show the American people that we're able to work together.
We did have a fairly robust conversation about the need for all of us to work together to send a signal that we're serious about cutting spending. We had agreement on that. I guess the particulars and the details will be where the disagreements may lie.
We looked at places that we could work together on, from jobs to cutting of government spending. And it was a beginning and a start. And we look forward to having the president on his word, where we can move legislation, where we can create new jobs in America.
Do you think Kevin brought his charts?
I think Kevin McCarthy brought his charts, and I think everybody else brought their best behavior, because John Meacham, I have not heard Republicans and Democrats sound so cooperative together well since 2001. It's been a while.
I was struck by, you heard common ground, you heard agreement, work together, move forward. I don't know what the president served at lunch, but they should keep serving it.
I'll have what he's having.
Exactly. Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question. Were you surprised by this tone? Do you know, did anything specific happen yesterday that hasn't been in the works for the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think as the president begins laying out a real attempt to make cuts on a bipartisan basis, and we've sort of settled, I hope, past that each side testing how strong we can look, I think the president realizes that whether it's cutting defense spending, reauthorizing the Patriot Act, or going after the entitlements that have confounded many presidents, it's going to have to be done on a bipartisan basis. And more important, the Republicans have to be enabler of good government behavior, unlike the last several years in which, quite frankly, the other party was enabling, if you will, the worst part of government, the growth of government beyond what's reasonable.
And you know, Mika, there's a new Gallup poll that came out talking about how the president's handling the deficit. So the president probably met the Republicans halfway, maybe even more than halfway. If you look at the new Gallup poll, it shows that many Americans still give the president very low marks on his handling of the economy. And when it comes to the deficit, only 27% approved, 68% disapproved. The president's having problems with this, and of course, so are House Republicans as well. They're battling in between.
Representative Issa, I want to ask you about that, because the New York Times is talking about the Republican plan to trim about $40 billion from the budget, and that they're reporting that there's a little bit of a mini revolt going on within the party, with conservative members demanding many more cuts, of course, and discussion we're having here at the table. How much friction is there with some of your colleagues?
Not really a whole lot. Remember that, and we score it as higher than 7 for the remaining part of the year. But these cuts are a first cut. We have said on the floor with the continuing resolution that every member, especially, if you will, those who are saying we should cut more, should look at the budget, look at the appropriations, and find cuts. Quite frankly, I'm positive that there will be Republicans offering and probably having accepted real additional cuts on the floor. But that's not going to be the leadership or one chairman picking what to cut. It's going to be the will of the people by a majority on the House floor, which really, Mika, is the right way to make additional cuts at this point.
You know, Darrell, if you have, by the way, any questions about love as well as the budget, you don't have to go on Craigslist anymore. We've got the love doctor here.
You know, Joe, yesterday Mika shut you down on Hooters. Today you're doing Harold balls. I'm not getting into that with you, I promise.
Chairman, I seriously, I am bruised up and down my arm, Darrell. It has been a very rough week. And yes, we will stay away from Harold.
I'm glad I want to keep this on track. I have a question, Joe. Obviously, you guys were talking in the first hour. 88% of the money is obviously on the big four: Medicare, Social Security, and Pentagon. I want to game this out for a second, because there is this kind of bugaboo in the corner. What would happen? I don't understand why, from a political sense, I want to say for a second, you can't go after. If a Democrat goes after, a Republican is not going to stand up and go, we can't do that. I mean, he would look like the biggest fool in the world. So why? I want to understand from a political gamesmanship point of view. We all know it has to happen. It's not a question. The Pulitzer Prize winner will tell all of us that. So then I don't understand even politically
because you've got to lock arms. And Darrell, I'm sure you'll agree with me that when Republicans stepped out and tried to save Medicare in 95 and 96, when the trustees said it was going bankrupt, Bill Clinton shamelessly demagogued, and it was Metascare. He said we were trying to hurt old people so we could give tax cuts to the rich. Republicans last year talked about death panels. They talked about some other things. So, Darrell, are we looking at an extended sort of game of chicken here, where at some point Republicans and Democrats are going to have to lock arms and do this together to tackle these 4 areas that you and the president and everybody knows need to be tackled?
You know, Joe, I think we're going to have to play the game of little successes. There's about $120 billion of estimated waste in Medicare. Going after waste and fraud in Medicare should be low-hanging fruit. On top of it, there are programs that are built up. For example, in Social Security, I was with a banker yesterday making several $100,000 or more a year, but he's over 65 and he has 2 children under 65. So each 2 children that are young, under 18, and they each get $800 a month from Social Security, because back in the 60s they said we had to have it to support over 65 people. In this case, he's not retired. He's living in a huge house, flying around the world. We can make those kinds of cuts if we do it on a bipartisan basis in Social Security. If we do that, if we make the cuts that make common sense, then as we start dealing with raising the retirement age and other incremental steps that are much larger, hopefully we'll have built up the confidence that if we make an agreement, we go to the floor, we vote it together, we don't demagogue it.
And Congressman, the committee you chair is going to be looking at the impediments of job creation, and you're going to be making specific targets, regulations. Tell us about that.
Well, Mika, what we're doing, we've been on a listening session. You know, back in June, the president, through OMB, did the same thing. He said to the Business Roundtable, what are the impediments? What are the regulations that are hurting your ability to compete against other countries? We've done the same thing. We have over 2,000 pages of responses. We've categorized them. We've had the General Accounting Office, Accountability Office, give us some help so that we do it factually. Now we're going to have a group of witnesses, large and small business, and have them begin telling us what they believe are the greatest impediments. We're not saying they are. What we're saying is business believes that, and as a result, we should see if we can't clear some of that way. You know, all the way back with Ronald Reagan, he said, "I'm not. Don't be misunderstood. I'm not here to close down government, but want to make it work with the people." That's what we need to do. We need to figure out where government has grown by 3 or 4 times in the way of regulations, and now makes it more convenient to produce overseas than here. And these are impediments that are not about how much you pay the employee, it's how much you pay in time and waste to the government.
Darrell, Issa, Harold Ford, good morning. I applaud your efforts around looking at regulations and trying to determine what's getting in the way of job creation.
Harold, come back. You were a champion for this.
Let me ask you one question. You talked about the entitlement. Yay or nay, would you be willing, I like your story about the 65 or older with the younger kids and the kids getting money. Would you be willing to means test Social Security? Would you be open to the idea? And two, would you be willing or open to the idea of raising the retirement age? Because ultimately that's how we lower this debt. You and I both know, and as Joe and Mika, and particularly Joe over the years, has made the point over and over again, we got to get serious about these entitlements.
Harold, you're exactly right on both counts. People of means over 65 are perfectly willing to have a degree of phase-in of means testing to help reduce the burden on the Social Security Trust Fund. And certainly, I absolutely believe that raising the retirement age for those who, in fact, are in good health makes a lot of sense, and people who continue working would agree.
All right.
Representative Darrell Issa, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you for keeping it sort of in the center of the road.